to the Barcode Podcast with your host, Chris Glandon, serving cybersecurity straight up with no chaser. Let's hit the bar and grab a drink.
There he is, Danny boy. Yo, why you got digital camo on?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. Being immersed with all the security experts got me to realize security is no joke. I mean, cyber attacks, or any attacks for that matter, can ambush you at any given time. So I throw on this uniform. You know, I'm ready to war. Let's get it.
Yeah, man. You ain't got to tell me. Cyber war is real.
And I keep it real. Check it out. Here's a drink you need to keep up on the front line. It's called Gunfire. Here's the ammo needed. 1 cup of hot black tea and a shot of rum.
Oh, yeah. You see who just walked in? Now you're about to see it get real.
Copy that. I'll see you next round.
Frankie McRae is the former head of the U.S. Army Special Forces Advanced Reconnaissance Target Analysis and Exploitation Techniques course at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He served in the 1st Special Forces Group in Okinawa, Japan, where he was an assault team leader. And he also served as a troop SGM in Iraq as an Iraqi counterterrorism force company SGM advisor and combat leader on many missions in Iraq, and also attended the Israeli counterterrorism course as an exchange instructor. He is also the current owner of Raidon Tactics, an organization that offers world-class tactical firearms, close quarters battle, force protection, and medical training. Frankie, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you coming on. I gave it a valiant effort, honestly, but you and I both know I couldn't do your intro justice. Your journey and what led you to where you are today is nothing short of an epic story. So would you mind sharing with us in your own words, you know, your background and essentially how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up in North Carolina, and I joined the Army when I was 22. Before I joined the Army, I actually cleared power lines, you know, the trees and all that, climbed trees and cleared the power lines at. And so I joined the Army, and I went to 1st Ranger Battalion as an infantry guy, and spent close to about 4 years in Savannah at 1st Ranger Battalion. And then I went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection. That's a 21-day course, you know, where everybody is judged on their abilities and more about the trainability. And then from there, I went to the Special Forces Qualification course as a Special Forces medic. And I, spent a couple of years on a detachment at Fort Lewis, Washington. A Special Forces A team is the 12-man detachment that we have. I was a senior medic, and then 1998, I went to Sephardic. That's what we call the big name that you put out there, Special Forces Advanced Reconnaissance Target Analysis and Exploitation Techniques course. That's a big, long name for basically hostage rescue and counterterrorism. It is the premier doctrinal course for hostage rescue and counterterrorism operations within Special Forces. I was actually supposed to go to Okinawa to be a sniper first, and had already been to sniper school. And in route with my change of duty station to Okinawa, they said, "Nope, we need you to be an assaulter, so we're going to send you to this school." And I was very happy with that. I don't have the patience to be a good sniper. So I went to the course, and we passed the course. That was a very, very hard course to pass.
Which one was that? The
assaulter course. The
assaulter course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sephardic. And so I spent about 6 years out in Okinawa, Japan, as part of the hostage rescue unit for the PACOM area, or Pacific Command area. I started out as, a mechanical breacher, and made my way through the ranks to be an assault team leader. And everybody in Special Forces comes down on some kind of an instructor timeline, and mine, I actually got to go back to the school where, I had gone. And so I was an instructor at the Sephardic course. I started out as a range master teaching combat marksmanship. And then I either was training or assisting instructor in basically every part of the course. My day started at 6 a.m. teaching combatives to Green Berets and ended probably 6-7 o'clock at night with whatever we were doing that day. Right. So I got promoted and got picked to be the non-commissioned officer in charge. So that's that's a really rewarding, challenging, but rewarding job. And, part of that, you write the doctrinal training and all that stuff for the counterterrorism and hostage rescue doctrine for special forces in that position. And then once I finished up my time there, I stayed here in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and went to 3rd Special Forces Group. And I was a troop sergeant major there with the hostage rescue unit. And went to Iraq twice with that unit. Then whenever I got done with that time, I was working a couple of special projects, and then I retired 2010.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'm interested in hearing about your experience in Iraq. Can you talk to me a little bit about your involvement there?
Had a couple of different missions. For one, the Iraqi counterterrorism force is their tier 1 hostage rescue and counterterrorism force. The unit I was in at the time stood them up literally from nothing, from the Iraqi army, taking recruits, training them, and turning them into a very awesome fighting force in the war on terror, and especially in the civil war that happened starting in 2005 and ending in about 2007, 2008. But these guys were literally living, in and around their enemies when they weren't on the job. It was a really, really rewarding job. I was the troop sergeant major, so I had Americans, in my unit, and then we were divided out as advisors to the ICTF, and then the entire ICTF kind of comes together. And so I was the basically company sergeant major for the ICTF advisor. And so, their guy was right next to me, standing side by side, and I had a terp or an interpreter, sorry. And, each one of my guys had, as a single American, they would have a troop or about 24 guys that they were in charge of. So we, special forces as a whole, we are not a big unit. We're very small. And, we operate in these 12-man detachments. We come together in the CIF, or the Combatant Commanders in Extremis Force, which is now called the CRIF, which is the Hostage Rescue Unit. We come together as 3 detachments of 36 Green Berets. We can be an autonomous unit, or we can work by, through, and with host nation forces and all that to train, advise, assist, and mentor on the counterterrorism and hostage rescue mission set. So, but as a Green Beret, our number one job is always unconventional warfare. So you always have that fallback job as well, even if you're in the hostage rescue unit, which is more of a direct action mission. But we're always the UW guys that are called on to overthrow hostile governments and all that. So
yeah. So when you were in Iraq, then you were in close proximity to enemy lines then.
Well, yeah, we did missions every night out and about almost anywhere in Iraq. Is because of who we were and what we were doing. We had a huge amount of classified missions, but countering the terrorism and more importantly, one of the other missions was the gathering of intelligence and prosecuting the war, going and taking down high level targets that were decision makers, influencers, and all that in the enemy's plan. So, for us, it was nothing to go out on a mission every night for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you'd get a night off. And in that night that you were off, you were actually planning for another big mission. It might be coming up 2 or 3 days later. And in that planning cycle, you're still going out and executing missions nightly. So I think my first trip, the 2005 trip, I was there for about 30 days, just before Christmas. I think we did 27 missions in that 30 days. So, and then in the 06 mission, in the first 30 days, we executed 90 different executable missions.
So it's nonstop.
Yeah. And our tours are short. We do 6-month tours because a year would just kill you physically because of the op tempo, the operations tempo that we were running. So it's a night job for sure, because I think in 06 I think we only did like 3 or 4 true start in the day, finish in the day missions. Everything else was at night, but it would finish in the day. So we hated being on the streets when morning prayer came on, because you knew everybody was coming out right after that.
And I'm assuming that's because of the low visibility, less surveillance happening at that time.
Well, and just the sheer numbers of people, if you're not by yourself, if you're, with a force of 36 guys plus another, 120 Iraqis, that's a large force to move in the streets and everything else. And so, we tried to reduce, it's funny, you try to reduce the firefights that you get in, but it never helps. Because while the guys that are in charge will not fight, they have people that will, and they have, big security details that support them and everything else. And so those are the guys that you're fighting to get to the bad guy to arrest him and prosecute him, for crimes. And, so it's just one of those things where, every night you could be getting in a firefight for, 10 straight nights. And then that one night, that you're not in a firefight, you're like, okay, what the hell's going on here? Because this is crazy.
Yeah.
Something's about to happen. You know what I mean? You're always the worst fear is right around the corner. And
yeah. So we spoke about this before, and you can sit here and draw very, very close parallels with the cybersecurity field. And I guess in this instance, sort of the situations that we're talking about, this is offensive security, right? So you're mainly the aggressor in these type of situations, and you think about physical security as well. And you have the social engineering approach, and you have the late night kicking the door tactics, both breaching security aspects.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from your experience, I'm just curious, what have you seen or witnessed, and how has it helped you to be a better offensive attacker? And then also, how does that in turn help you become a better defender of physical attack techniques?
That's a great question. So, looking at from all aspects, even from the training of the doctrinal side, where at the schoolhouse, we taught textbook close quarters battle and, textbook shooting and breaching and, all this kind of stuff. Those fundamentals never change. When you get into what we call operational close quarters battle, though, there's things that you're going to operate not just off the fundamentals, but it's going to be based off of principles, and you're going to be able to mix a lot more principles in with that. So understanding, a couple of things. Number one, as a Green Beret, we do direct action, missions, kicking in doors and all that. We also do the unconventional warfare mission, overthrowing the governments and that kind of stuff. But kind of in the middle is what we call FID, or foreign internal defense. And so FID is counterinsurgency, or what we call the COIN mission. The counterinsurgency mission is the same kind of thing that I see in today's world with vulnerability assessments, threat assessments, and everything else. What is the threat, and then how can we either eliminate it or counter it? And looking at it from both sides of the mission planning of being the good guy going in and kicking in a door to catch the bad guys. Well, we look at it from the bad guy's point of view first. Okay, what is this guy going to set up for us? Because we as Green Berets are considered the bad guys a lot of times, to the enemies that we're going in and working against. And so working in and behind quote unquote enemy lines, we have to think like a bad guy as well. And so that's where that physical threat assessment and then threat vulnerability assessment comes in as well. And those two are two totally separate things that have to work in conjunction with each other to give you a more complete picture of what it is you're going up against, but also more importantly, to have your contingency plans, because you can make all the plans in the world, but you're fighting an enemy that will change that plan, and he has a counter to your plan. So, in the world I live in now, I'm not kicking indoors and all this other stuff. I actually love training civilians more than I do the military, because, I look at things now from the perspective of, being the good guy sitting at home and the bad guy doing a home invasion, right? While they're going to use the same tactics I did, to do that home invasion or kicking in the door to prosecute that part of the war, that mission and part of the war. Now I'm the guy sitting in the living room, watching TV with my family, in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and I'm in my home, and now bad guys want to come in. So understanding what it takes to do it on the outside of the door, kicking it in, really helps with understanding the normal everyday side of things of being inside the door, watching TV, right? Those skills are collateral, and they can go both ways. And so that's where we really help a lot of people with their own home security, their business. Like you look at this thing with Texas with the active shooter, that could just as easily be at the Walmart or anywhere else, because evil is everywhere. We have to be prepared for it and everything else. And it's in the cyber world as well, working with Jim Tiller, someone that actually introduced us,
Yeah.
Him and I will put that physical and that digital sides together, and kind of come up with that plan, or that, number one, the threat. We have to identify the threat and then assess that threat based on our OPI studies, and then do our own threat vulnerability assessment, looking at it from the bad guy's point of view. So,
yeah. And I do want to get into more of the active shooter piece in a minute, but, getting back to what you said about home security, and you hear about, or you would think assaults or physical assaults at your place of work would typically happen more at a business location for whatever reason. And no doubt you have to be ready for that. But let's flip it to what you said about assaults within a work from home environment where organizations aren't responsible. If it happens at the place of business, you can point the finger and say, look, you're liable. But if you have a domestic violence situation, a verbal abuse, drug abuse type situation, I mean, that shit could really affect you. And you're expected to be in a safe environment at all times, but it's not always like that.
Yeah. And we had this conversation before, and Jim Tiller and I were discussing it a couple of months ago. We were working on a problem set together, and I asked him, I said, because I own my own company, and Jim works for this huge multinational company. I said, when you have people working from home, what does your company do if someone gets hurt at home, technically on the job, And he goes, nothing. I said, if they got hurt at the workplace, that company would definitely be liable. Now, granted, a company can't be expected to, go into someone's home and validate and decree and, make you do this, and this, and all that. That would just, what's the point working at home, right? But the thing is, it's up to that individual person to protect themselves and everything else. And I think it was you and I were talking the other day, like you look at since COVID hit and these lockdowns, many kids are at home, and they grow up in a poorer household. They're not getting the food that they need because the family can't afford it. The mom has to work, the dad has to work, and, the kid is at home by themselves. The potential there, depending on how small the kid is, can be devastating. Now they don't have a lot of food. So those same kind of things happen, throughout life, but when it really comes down to it, a lady working from home, trying to make ends meet and everything else, and a husband who's out of work because his business is failing, and he's already, abusing her, and now it's just going to get worse, Yeah. So do I know the answer to that? Absolutely not, because there are so many individual scenarios that could happen.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to think of the home dynamics as well, because they can alter so much that if that screening was done one day, the next day could be completely different.
Yep. And, the other thing too, Chris, is I give a lot of talks and seminars and stuff about, employee assessments and everything else. You can pick the absolute best employees, right? I have a saying, great employees make you money, good employees you break even, but bad employees you lose money, right? So, but you can't assess partners, you can't assess the family life and everything else. And so, a lot of these people working from home are finding themselves in, could be some seriously dangerous situations on a daily basis,
Absolutely.
I don't know the answer to that other than, hey, work yourself out of that position. You know what I mean? But, as far as like the home defense type thing, where we really focus our training is in three things: either the home, the vehicle, or the workplace, right? And, the vehicle is, it's just your vehicle. It's your conveyance, how you get back and forth to wherever you're going, right? There's some training that has to happen physically for that. The home itself, your home, your locked door from that inside, the curtilage, or, basically nothing more than a fancy porch, basically. And then the workspace itself, while you as an individual may have a lot to say at work, you don't have a lot to say about your overall security because the company has to balance that. And so that's where we work with the individual, in the conveyance from home to work or home to church or wherever in their car. We work at their home individually for them to, assess their threats and everything else and make a more secure home. But, with the workplace, we have to work with the companies themselves because, an individual can't come in and one day say, okay, this is what we're going to do if that's not his place. Managers and leaders, and that's a whole nother subject to get on. What's the difference between a manager and a leader? They've got to come together to look for the best security for their people, at work.
Yeah, that's a great point because typically with the work from home dynamic, you have a lot of focus on data security and securing your sensitive data, but you rarely have a manager or leader in the organization help you secure the physical side. That's something to consider.
Yeah. And, that's where Jim and I have, we work with the companies to help people that work from home, to give them the individual training that they need. It can be very simple things to, hey, just understanding an alarm system, on the physical side of that type of thing. But then you look at the data that is coming from every home in America right now, how to secure that and everything else. The company might think, it's a somewhat secure, Wi-Fi and all that stuff. But, you think of the vulnerabilities that are out there. If I knew that you were working on a project that my competitors could use that information,
yep.
And just as the lone wolf guy, hey, I can go in and be that man in the middle and take that data and that information. And while you're sending it to your company, I'm sending it to my company. And I think a lot of people don't think about that physical and digital interaction there. All I've got to do is be next door. All I got to do is be in a delivery van across the street.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, like the very simple things, an 802.11, video capture, and I just I'm watching your home video system, and it's funny the things that are out there that are simple that even guys like you that are, big on the security and everything else, you overlook the simple things because, well, it's my home.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I get it. And it makes complete sense. So check this out. Let's say hypothetically an intruder breaks into your house. They're weaponized. So you're in a very, very vulnerable position at this point. I'd say not only have they just breached you physically by gaining access into your home, they also have the potential to breach your data as well, because at this point they can easily infiltrate your computer system and force you to provide that information to them.
Yep.
So,
think of a simple thing like this, right? Yesterday, there was a guy from the Vivint alarm company, right? And he stops by and he's sitting here trying to sell me an alarm system. And I'm like, hey man, we've already got one. Thank you very much. And it's funny. He had an empty water bottle in his hand and it's hot, it's 92 degrees and he's walking around and I didn't really think about it that much at the time. But basically, he's standing on the front porch of our house and he's talking. I said, yeah, man, I'm not really interested. We have a system. And well, what system do you have? Well, it's okay. I'm not going to tell you that because, as soon as you know what system, now you know the vulnerabilities, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And he goes, well, I see you have a sign out there. I said, no, that's not who we have.
Yeah.
I keep a separate sign, right? And so anyway, he goes, well, hey man, can I, and he's sweating. I mean, he's legitimately sweating. It's, 92 degrees. And he goes, can I get some water? I said, dude, step in the house, man. Let's get you out of the heat. And so he handed me his water bottle and I gave it to my wife. Said, hey, can you grab him some water out of the fridge? And, gave him, and she couldn't, but either way, we gave him 2 bottles of water and I said, hey man, have a good day, but we're not interested. He goes, oh, hey, not a problem, man. Not everybody says yes. I said, no, that's a good attitude to have. And he walked on out. Right. And he was parked down the street and it hit me. I said, why is he out walking the neighborhood? And my wife goes, well, I don't know, Mr. Security guy, why'd you let him in? And I said, because it's 92 damn degrees outside and the kid is sweating his ass off, give the guy some shade. But nothing really came of it, and I don't think anything did come of it. But that simple little act is a physical intrusion into your world, right? At the time, the guy could be looking at defenses that you have. He literally could have been standing there with some kind of scanner in his pocket and, gathering all kinds of data because, he couldn't get it from indoors. And that's the kind of things that, we have to be aware of. At the same time, we can't be 100% against, no, get out of my house and never come in and all this other stuff, because not everything is a threat. We just have to have awareness and the mindset that everything can be a threat. And that's kind of that interaction between the physical and digital is our mental, our mindset about that. And we have 5 stages of awareness that we talk about in our curriculums. But, if you're not aware, you will go from not aware to overloaded instantly, and a lot of people tend to they'll discount the physical because they're in the digital world, or even worse, they'll discount the digital because they're in the physical world. Like Jim Tiller has got me scared to open any email. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
After watching him, and he gives such phenomenal presentations, but at the end of it, you're like, Jesus Christ, I'm fuck this. I am not turning my computer on. You know what I mean? I'm not turning on a radio. I'm not turning on my phone. I'm everything off. I'm going to hand crank my generator and, put it into a pure sine wave inverter. You know what I mean? So
yeah, man, get off the grid. I get it though, man. I mean, I think that 99% of the time, that's my thought process. And I definitely overanalyze. And I think it's just the nature of the business. I mean, we are all security minded and it just comes with the territory. But it is the awareness factor. I think it's all about being aware of the situation you're in and the potential danger you're faced with.
Yeah, and I call it having a cautious suspicion. I talked to the guy on the porch and, looking at his demeanor, everything else, you know what I mean? Then I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll get you some water. Come on in and get out of the shade. But it's funny because we have a foster pit bull, and of course we have Belgian Malinois as well. They're all actual police trained and all that stuff. And so I'm not too worried about people getting in the house and surviving. But the Belgians were in the kennels in another part of the house, and the pit bull, he's just a little sweetheart, and but he comes running up to the guy, and the guy's like immediately kind of like, oh shit, and I kind of looked, and I thought, yep. But the thing is, you're absolutely right. You just have to have a what we call a cautious suspicion of everybody and everything that comes into your home, and that's one of the things I really tell people. Like we just finished up a series of security seminars for the III, a bunch of financial investors and all that stuff. And, the OPI are the scale, the kind of the term we use for actually assessing and determining your threats, is very useful for people and people you don't know. And I tell people more than anything else, use it for people you do know, because there's people you do know are there for a reason. They're either there for you or they are against you. And we see so many times, the old saying, keep your friends close, keep your enemy closer. That's where OPI comes into that formulation, especially in the digital world, because, there's so many proprietary things out there, from, just a code sequence to the way of doing business and everything else, that in the business world, that is the true battleground is the business world. And people are ruthless, and they will definitely try to take whatever they can to get that upper hand, be it for that good old mighty dollar.
Yeah. So I do want to switch back real quick and hit on active shooter preparedness. And I know we all agree that this is an important topic, especially when we look at the recent tragedies in both Buffalo and Uvalde. Since these incidents are often unpredictable, from your perspective, how can we enhance active shooter preparedness in our community?
Well, there's a couple of different things we have to do. Number one, we have to be aware as every individual human being in the society. And that's from your home, understanding what your neighbors, what's going on at your neighbor's house, not their business. Don't get in their business, but just observe.
Right.
You know what I mean? Look for those things that tell you something's wrong, right? And it doesn't mean to jump in the middle and be the hero. What it means is just be aware. And, while I hate going to New York City, they have a saying there. If you see something, say something, right?
Yeah.
But don't call the cops every time you hear noise either. But, when you see something that could be potentially dangerous in the neighborhood, like a vehicle that constantly is kind of scoping things out, say something, call the cops. If they're not in your neighborhood, if you don't know them from your neighborhood, call the cops. That's their job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The biggest thing we can do at our workplace, and we do everything, again, our company does everything around those three conveyances, or those three things, the home, motor vehicle, and the workplace, because that's where we're at, right? In your vehicle, if, you're coming up to a neighborhood that's got a bad reputation for hijacking and things like that, be cautious. Keep your head out of your text and keep your eyes on the road. Look left, look right. Be prepared to drive away if you have to. Go through that red light if you have to. You know what I mean? But when we come down to work, and work can be school, work can be, a school because you work there, work can be because you're a student there, either way. If the place has put in security measures, follow those security measures, because they're put in place for a reason. And I'm not throwing blame when I say this, okay? But the fact is that, like the Uvalde school shooting, they had doors that were locked, and there was one way into the school and one way out, until a teacher went out a side door and propped it open to get on the phone. And then she came back in and she didn't unprop the door. And that's how the shooter got into the school. Now, everything after that has been a disaster. We have got to protect our kids, and there's so many ways we can do that. But the other thing is, we will never defeat evil as a whole, because once you destroy evil in one spot, it pops its head up in another. So it takes us to be aware. And it's, like I said, awareness is the key to everything. But then understanding what to do in that situation. And that's where, as a company, we come in to other companies and say, hey, here's some countermeasures. And let me kind of step back a minute. There's anti-terrorism and there's counterterrorism. And so we work in both realms of the anti-terrorism, preventing it from happening, and then counterterrorism once it's happened. A lot of people will interchange those, and they're actually two separate fields. And it's so funny. I see all these people on the news that, I'm a counterterrorism expert, but yet you worked at a university. You're not a counterterrorism expert. You may be an anti-terrorism expert, but countering means physically countering, or digitally countering. But, this policy stuff is not counter.
Yeah.
Because policies don't work to stop evil. You have to physically stop evil. But that's a whole nother matter there, and I don't want to get into the politics of that, right? But policies that are in place at work are only as good as the adherence to those policies. And that takes the individual to do their part. It's one thing for that lady to go outside and use the phone, but it's another to prop the door open and allow others to come in. Even if she had, stepped outside, used the phone and shut the door, even though she couldn't come back in, maybe walk back around to the front, because the policy was doors are to be closed, classroom doors are to be closed. And, the 2 classrooms that the guy went into were the only ones that were open. He had gone past multiple doors and tried to get in multiple doors that were locked. So there's people that are following the policy, following the procedures, and he found that one that was open. And I heard a report that goes, looky here, what have we got here? Something like that. But, he made his way into the room because, again, the doors were unlocked. And so we'll go in like for religious facility, because we break our stuff down either educational, facility, or industrial, just the workplace itself. But we have done quite a bit consulting with churches, and we've got a lot of mega churches here in the South. And we not only train their security teams on the physical aspects, but we also go through and talk about the actual infrastructure, and the policies of having someone in the parking lot, having a greeter, hey, be nice until it's time not to be nice, that type of thing. And a lot of churches support their security teams because it's a mindset. But you don't find that at the business place. The business place is, they've got those security guys, When we first moved here to Fayetteville, my wife worked at Department of Social Services, and they had one sheriff's deputy that was there. The guy literally just kind of stood around, and it's like he did nothing for the facility. And then one night, a guy, the simple thing of having bushes overgrown gave a guy a place to hide. And one night, one of the DSS ladies came out. He waited on her, and he threatened her. And the cops were already gone because she was, there late. And but he knew she was there late. Why? Because he could sit right there and watch the entire thing. The sheriff's deputy didn't do anything, and all that. And so this is where you as an individual in a company cannot rely on that security guard. That guy's getting paid the least amount of money to do the most work. Your company has said these are going to be our policies, good, bad, or indifferent that they are. But if they say, hey, keep doors locked, damn it, keep doors locked. Yeah. There's a reason for that. And some companies have a very good security posture while others have absolutely nothing in place. And so that's kind of where we help, either to validate those companies that have good procedures or to help those companies that have nothing in place and are really worried about it.
Yeah. And I talk about it often where, it's ideal to have policies in place, but you need to have those controls. Like you mentioned, when that door shut, put an auto lock on it, right?
Yeah.
Or sound an alarm after 30 seconds.
100%.
But the thing is also that you have to have continuous testing of those controls.
100%. And that's where the vulnerability assessments come in that we do. We'll go to a company. It's funny. We had a company that called us, and we came up with plans and everything else. It was about 8 years ago. And we went back 3 years after we had put all this plans in place, and we literally walked in, and it was so funny. You could tell that they were, as a company, were trying to implement the policies, but the employees were they were such a weak link. I mean, we could walk in and pretty much do whatever we wanted. And I was like, oh my God, but the problem is the company had enough turnover in that 3 years that, we gave the entire company a briefing and like, hey, this is the things to do. This is what you do for active shooter. This is what you do for this is what you do for that. And we gave them emergency action plans and everything else. But the problem is there was enough of a turnover that people that working 3 years later had no clue that we had even been there. And so luckily the company's like, hey, we really want you to come back. Tell us what you think. And they had enough forethought to go, hey, wait a minute. We were noticing a degradation of our policies and our stance, with security. And so it basically, it's an always evolving and revolving, thing, because again, new employees, they're not in on it. So it's no longer a standard operating procedure. It's something new for those guys. So,
yeah. And active shooter response training is something that you offer with Raidon Tactics. You also offer civilian training, education, commercial. You mentioned religious institutions. Can you talk to me a little bit more about Raidon Tactics and the training that you provide there?
Yeah, so we are a training company, plain and simple. We have Department of Defense Tier 1 clients that we train repeatedly through to DoD contracts. We have our own civilian training division for civilians that want to come through. We call that the Combat University. You can go to thecombatuniversity.com for that shameless plug right there. The thing about the Combat University is it's made for everybody in the country because we've kind of come up with, I think, a pretty good system of online training showing you the things you can do either with a pistol, rifle, shotgun, or combatives. And medicine, that's the other big thing that we incorporate that a lot of other people don't. And part of that is because I was a special forces medic, understanding, active shooter scenarios and that type of thing. Everybody does stop the bleed seminars on how to put on a tourniquet. But the problem is civilians are not dying by getting shot in the arms and legs. They're dying by getting shot in the chest and the head. And so we teach those treatments to be done by anybody that's there. I mean, simply putting a plastic bag over a sucking chest wound and holding it there will do more than running around screaming, not having an idea what to do, right? Yeah. So we developed the Combat University for our civilian training, whether it be for home defense, again, car, vehicle, or the workplace, right? And then we also have our facility where we do our training. We have 2 campuses here in Central North Carolina. One is our gun range, and the other is our dojo over in Aberdeen. And so we, do a lot. We get a lot of people that are like, hey, I don't want to carry a gun, but I really do want to learn to defend myself. Okay, not a problem. We'll teach you the combatives portion. And then we get all the gun guys. Oh, I just want to be a gunfighter. And I'm like, okay, but you got to learn how to fight first. And like, no, I don't need that. I got my gun. Well, that's the first mistake right there. Don't bring a gun to a knife fight. And it's people don't understand that it takes time to get to the gun when a guy with a knife can be on you before you know it. And so we bring all this together in a couple of different things. And we even do our personal digital defense seminars as well because of the fact that now you can so easily be exploited on the digital side. And, if I can take all your money on the digital side, I don't have to hold a gun to your head. I don't have to hold a knife to your throat. I don't even have to be there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where, you guys, fully understand that. And so that's where, we partnered with Jim Tiller on that. And so we're bringing all of that. And then we do our preparedness training, not just for physical preparedness of different situations, whether it be, active shooter, natural disasters, but just the upcoming food shortages, things that we get a lot of people trained up on is just how to be self-reliant and understand, what's going to be happening and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's Raidon Tactics, RaidonTactics.com. For those that want to check it out. And I mean, I'm looking through the courses. You have night fighter training, combatives, low light home defense, rifle, pistol, shotgun, long range. I mean, it's quite an impressive course selection. And I can't think of anyone more qualified to run this than yourself. But I'm looking at your list of instructors and it's unreal, the skill set that your instructors have.
Yeah, every one of our instructors are all Green Berets who taught at the Sephardic course. I mean, that is literally the doctrinal writers for special forces. I mean, when it comes to shooting, moving, and communicating, that's the doctrine that we all use. And so we're all instructors there. And, the funny thing is anybody can go to a course and they're only going to learn about 20% of the total information in that course. They're going to learn really just enough to kind of be tested and passed. But when you are an instructor and then write the doctrine, you had better know your shit. And that's where we all come from. So, for us, I think we bring a lot more to bear on the market than most people have any clue, because I teach more now to civilians than I taught to Green Berets at the course, because we only had so much time, and we had standards. We had to, the students had to meet these standards. And so we had to make sure that they could do that. When I first took over the course, we had a 65% failure rate. And this is Green Berets going to a course, and I used to get commanders all the time. Why in the hell are 65% of Green Berets failing this course? And when I took over, I realized it literally was just the training schedule. We didn't change any standards for any test. All we changed was a little bit of the training schedule itself. And we went to my very first class as the NCOIC, went to a 90% pass rate. And testing a student, and this gets back to the 20% rule, testing a student on something that he just learned is different than testing a student on something that he just learned 3 weeks later, especially when he's been doing operational CQB and everything else, right? So you've changed in the time from the time you taught him task A to testing him on task A. You've taught him task all the way up to P. And now, there's that conflation and everything else where now they're going to be overthinking it because they're thinking, hey, I'm tactical problem solving now. No, I just need to go to your point of domination, dumbass. But they overthink it, and so, guys will respond in the way that they've been conditioned to. And so just that simple little thing of, hey, we want the student to respond to this particular situation this way for the test. Okay, so test him that way. Don't test him 2 or 3 weeks later on a task he learned 3 weeks ago and has now changed 14 different techniques, Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect approach to it.
Yeah, and that's we take that through all of our training with any subject that we teach. And you did your podcast with Jim Tiller, a couple of months ago, and he teaches the exact same way. And every time I listen to him, man, I'm just like, and then, and I have access to him every day. That's kind of the great thing about it is, we find that students really respond not to the instructors so much as how the instructors teach and train, because they're like Jim Tiller. They're absolute masters in their field. And more importantly, they're not there to impress you with how much they know. They're there to make you impress them with how much you can learn.
Agree 100%. And shout out Jim Tiller, man. Jim is the man.
Yeah, he is. He's one of my favorite human beings.
Yeah, I got to hit up 95 South soon and come down so us three can link up.
You'll probably find us together. So,
yeah, I want to switch gears for a moment. I know you've traveled the world, and since this is Barcode, I have to ask you, in your opinion, where is the world's best bar?
Ooh, so that's a hard question. Okay, so Tahitian Queen 2, Pattaya, Thailand, is probably one of my favorites when my buddy Jerry Holt was managing it. And I was with my friends, but it really doesn't matter what bar I'm in. I'm not a big drinker, but if I'm with my friends and so I'm that person, I don't get intoxicated.
Okay.
Because, I've got to drive, I've got to, have my awareness and everything else. But any bar that my friends are in where I don't have to be aware because I know they've got my back. So that's any bar for me. But again, I'm not a big drinker. I can literally count the number of times I've been intoxicated where I have not had to care on a single hand. But each time it's where a very good friend is. So that's the most favorite bar. Any bar in the world, because I've literally been all over the world, is where me and my friends are. So
nice. No, I love that answer. And you're right. Intoxication is the 180 from awareness.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
But yeah, send me the link to that bar. I want to check it out.
And I think and I have to put a plug in for my second favorite bar would be the Roadhouse in Angeles City, Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what makes that one unique?
Again, being with friends and that type of thing. So yeah.
Got it. And I always say Barcode is a philosophy too, and intoxication is not required in any means, right?
Yeah.
It's more about that personal connection and enjoying that conversation with those around you. So,
yeah. And I'll tell you, man, that's the essence of life. If you can't feel safe with your friends, and who the hell can you feel safe with? You know what I mean?
Great point. So I just heard last call here. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, what's up?
If you opened a cybersecurity themed bar, what would the name be and what would your signature drink be called?
Well, I am the last person to be asking anything about cybersecurity, but it would be man in the middle.
Okay. All right. I like that.
Why, I don't know, but hey, it's the first thing that hit when you ask, because that is, a big threat.
Absolutely.
And that's the interface of, the physical and the digital. I can see where some other connotations would be.
Well, no, man in the middle attack. You got a man in the middle attack. So, the bar man in the middle. And, that means that you at least at all times have 3 patrons in your bar. That's
it. You'd have to have at least 3. And I think the signature drink, ooh, that's a hard one. Well, if it's up to me, it would be Jim Beam and Coke. And, that would be, I'm a bourbon guy.
Okay.
And that would be it.
That's awesome. And I'm sure there would be no issues with the physical security aspect of this bar.
We would have some pretty big bouncers, you know what I mean?
Bouncers, snipers, whatever you need, right? You got to keep them in check.
That's it.
Well, Frankie, thanks, man, so much for stopping by today. Before you go, let us know where we can all find you online.
Personally, I don't have very much out there. You can find us at RaidonTactics.com, thecombatuniversity.com, and 37psr.com. That's kind of, where you'll find our services and all of us.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate you. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
As you know, Barcode is where security and IT professionals hang out after a long day. So, get your message front and center to our fans by sponsoring an episode. Learn more at thebarcodepodcast.com/sponsor. Cheers.
Unfortunately, it's time to shut the bar down for this episode. Thanks for stopping in. See you next time. We'll save you a seat. Be sure to check us out at thebarcodepodcast.com.